the start of week 11 and you've only got 2 weeks left until your first competition. Let's get a plan for the week. I'm Coach Pratt and I've been teaching robotics and design for over a decade now. By the end of today's video, you should have a clear plan for the week for your programmers, your build team, and your outreach team so that you can find the most success at your first qualifying tournament. Starting with the overall goals for this week. It is refining prototype, code freeze by the end of the week, and more portfolio work preparing for your first competition. For your build team, although you have your first competition robot done, now is that time to continue to refine on those new mechanisms for your next competition. Because hopefully you've done enough work to be able to get yourself through to your next regional tournament. We'll see when things come up to it in the next coming weeks when you have your first competition. But you don't want to stop designing as if you are finished at this point. You also don't want to be making changes to the competition robot. So you can be making version 2 or version 1.4, version 1.5, whatever it is that you're currently iterating through. And you've had likely a full week now of being able to see the drivers working on that robot. So you can have a much better understanding of what kind of things need to change in your robot for the next competition. Keep in mind, consistent robots that are simple in design and do things well and reliably over time tend to perform better than robots that go for sort of a Hail Mary strategy. This doesn't mean you can't change multiple subsystems or even change a strategy where you could go from one flywheel shooter to 2. You could go to a catapult. You could go to a choo-choo mechanism. Depends on where your team is going and where that kind of prototype is moving up. Because you may find there's things that your programs want to do that your current design doesn't allow for. Perhaps if you've had a fixed shooter at this point, you could consider adding some sort of rotation to that shooter, and that might be enough iteration before your next competition. But you're really kind of starting to dream a little bigger and thinking about what could we change on our robot to make it even better for our next competition. And then the critical point, testing doesn't start till the wheels are on, to make sure you're actually testing this design on your robot and that prototype robot as it is you get going. So for your programming team, now's the time to actually start running some timed practice matches, because at the end of the week, hopefully you're going to freeze your code so you get no new features and only some sort of critical bug fixes. So this week, you should really focus on consistency. I met a team at Worlds last season, and I believe it was the Tech Tigers. And they had charts and spreadsheets so they could show that they ran their autonomous section over 100 times that season. And they could keep track of just how consistent that shot is. And I think that's a wonderful example of teams using data to inform their designs. So start up with some spreadsheets and log your consistency on your data over time. Don't change something every single time you do a run. In my opinion, because this is physical computing and so many things can change from one design to the next, now's the time to run things at least 3 times at a minimum. Yeah, so run the same autopath 3 times in a row. And if the same issue happens each time, then you can start making some shifts. But there are different things happen each time you run that autonomous pathing, then something else needs to shift. You need to have some sort of consistent data moving in, because in robotics, we talk about it as garbage in, garbage out. If you have garbage inputs, you're going to inevitably create garbage outputs. So running things multiple times, yes, I know it seems a little bit boring to run something 3 times, but trust me, if you run it 3 times, you'll get far faster results at debugging things and getting down to the actual root of the problem quicker than if you were to just simply run it once. And trust me, if you run something 3 times in a row, you're going to find the actual problem far sooner than running, making a change, running, making a change, running, make a change. It's just so hard to isolate variables when you are only running something once, especially in something like a robot or physical computing, where so many different things can be going wrong here. Make sure you have collaborated with your drivers to run some testing on what kind of things they'd like to see automated inside where they're driving around, what kind of things seem difficult, what kind of things seem awkward for your driver or drivers, and get some feedback from them about how these things can be improved over the week. When we talk about your outreach team, this is a good time. Hopefully you have a rough draft of your presentation, and it's a good time to start running some of those mock judge sessions with your teachers, your mentors, your coaches, however it is your structure is set up. and actually run some of those 5-minute sessions. It's a good time for you to really practice your public speaking skills. One of the biggest suggestions I can give you is generally it's a few different judges you can talk to, looking at one and then looking at the next judge, looking at one judge, then looking at the next judge, swapping every so often, every 10 to 15 seconds, something like that. If you find that eye contact is a struggle for you, you can look at someone's forehead, you can look at someone's nose, you can look at someone's mouth, and at any of those 3 points, you can look at the cheek, and it doesn't feel near as intimidating talking to the person by looking at their nose or looking at the cheek than it is directly at their eye, but the person will perceive that you are still looking at them directly in the eye, because in the judging portion, public speaking is a really big section of that. Get some feedback, make sure that your time is within that 5-minute limit. You generally don't want to be going over. This is also a good time for your mentors to ask you back some questions. You can think about what kind of questions have judges asked me in the past. You can do some research online, use a large language model to help you come up with some test questions, and have these judges ask your team these questions. You want to try to have most team members speaking in this so you can show that this is a team effort when you're coming through. It's also a good time to print out your final engineering portfolio and assemble up your pizza plate if you have one, to check to make sure you're within those 3 meter by 3 meter requirements, or I think it's 12 feet by 12 feet. Depending on which region of the world you're in, you're going to have different pit designs. It may even be 2.5 meter by 2.5 meter. Look into those on the specific rules depending on what your qualification tournament are. By practicing your judge session, you'll be far more likely to have a lot more success when you come in and be able to show off a professional image when you're done. Don't try to just wing this. So those are your goals for this week. Some more refinement prototyping, moving into those next weeks. A code freeze by the end of the week, so you're not making any radical changes to things, not many radical changes to your autonomous pathings or for your driver. And the reason I say this is because next week you're going to have to give your driver a full week of practice. And then run through some of those mocked judge sessions for your portfolio and your judging presentation. If you're looking for more resources on this, you consider joining the community down below or check out some of the other tutorials on my channel. And I'm curious how your team is preparing for your first competition. Have you already had your first competition? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, best of luck this season on your next robotics project.